So I sat here with a long, drawn-out explanation. I'm talking about all kinds of different things. I'm doing all kinds of different stuff. Let me just boil this video down and talk about the basics. This is a two-stroke engine out of a weed trimmer. It's gonna be the same thing for a chainsaw, blower, all kinds of different things. How does it really work? There's no valve train, there's no timing chain, there's no rocker arms, there's no push rods, there's no oil pump, there's no any of that stuff. There's just a basic jug, flywheel, crankshaft, piston, connecting rod. It's as basic as you can get. I got it flipped around right here, but let's, I took the piston ring out so I can just pop this whole thing out. And I can slap it right back in. This is the bottom end of this engine. See how close it gets to the crankshaft, but it's hard for me to actually spin this thing around. It's too wobbly. But, so a two-stroke, every single time it hits top dead center, it's gonna fire. It's a firing stroke every single time. It's pretty tricky how it works. So, I've got a KTM cylinder head and jug right here from a two-stroke. I'm sitting here trying to explain the ports and where the air goes. I want you to look at this. This is the exhaust port. And this right here is the intake port. You see how the intake port is, they're almost on the same plane, but the intake port is below the exhaust port. Now, I'm gonna dump this piston back in this jug and we're gonna try to visualize what's going on here. So the engine goes something like this. Now the spark plug goes in here, but this is the intake side and this is the exhaust side. So there's these holes right here. And this is where the air goes to be introduced inside the cylinder jug. I got all my lights on inside my garage and it's still hard to see inside here. So what you see right there, that bottom hole, that's the exhaust. That top hole right there, that's the intake. The air is actually introduced before combustion in these side holes. See those two holes right there and those two holes right there? They connect. See those two holes inside the jug and those two holes inside the jug, right? That's different than the intake and the exhaust. So there's 4 different holes inside this jug. That's what creates the valves. That's what turns on and off the intake stream. So let's try to get a better visualization, representation of what's going on in this two-stroke. Traditionally, a mechanic or someone mechanically inclined would think that the intake, the air, the fresh air is gonna come in the engine when the piston is all the way below the intake. That's not how this works. Since this intake is below the exhaust, the only time this intake port is open is at the very bottom of the piston. You see, that's this piston skirt right there. That's the connecting rod that we're seeing. So when the piston is at top dead center right here, that's when air is introduced in the intake. The air goes through this intake hole and it goes down into the crankcase. The gas air mixture, because the fuel oil mixture, the two-stroke gas, is gonna go lubricate this special connecting rod bearing. It's like a needle bearing. It's gonna lubricate all this bottom end, and then it's gonna go through these holes right here, and then it's going to be introduced almost at the same exact time as the exhaust is exiting, the fresh air is entering. We can see that represented right here. Let's take a look at this jug right here. Do you see that port right there and that port right there? It's literally almost That's what I showed you inside this jug right here. See those ports? They're almost on the same exact plane. Is the intake and the exhaust happen at the same time. So the exhaust is coming out because it's hot air. The piston comes, it's expelled gas. The piston comes down and it has to do with air density. The hot air is less dense, the cold air is more dense. So the hot air is gonna naturally want to escape anyway. And then the cold air is going to want to enter, but it creates a vacuum effect. When that piston, when that piston comes all the way up like this, and then it rolls back around, it pushes, the piston actually pushes the air into the cylinder. Does that make sense? So it sucks it in right there. On this side, the piston is closed off still, right? When the intake is open, the exhaust is shut. And then we'll roll it back around. This is the firing stroke. And then at the very bottom of this firing stroke, right there, even though that intake port is closed, it's working inside the engine with that vacuum effect to push that air through those ports on the side. And then, see, this is bottom dead center. The piston is at the very bottom of the throw. So both ports are open, the intake ports and the exhaust port. So then we could go further and talk about expansion chamber muffler and how that creates even more power and how that creates more of a surge. It's basically like putting a turbocharger or a supercharger on your two-stroke engine. When you see those big massive expansion chamber pipes on beautiful looking dirt bike pipes made by FMF or whoever, the factory pipes, whatever, you know, just that's what those are there for, to make even more power. But this thing is so crazy. It's fantastic how simple it is. And for the fact that even though that stroke is shorter, so it's a completely different characteristic of power than a four-stroke engine, because a four-stroke engine, every other time the piston hits top dead center is whenever it's gonna have a firing stroke. So the characteristics of a four-stroke engine, it's gonna have a little bit more low-down torque and a little bit less horsepower. You're gonna have more horsepower and less torque with this two-stroke. It's like comparing a VTEC Honda to a tractor V8 or something. I don't know, tractors probably don't even have V8s, but it's like lugging power versus zippy power. It's way, not only that, but it's the applications that they are found in are where you need it the most. Like for instance, dirt bikes, it's very important to have power to weight ratio because you want to have that maneuverability, the flickability. You want to be able to move and maneuver similar to what you want to be able to do with a weed trimmer, with a string trimmer, with a blower, with a chainsaw. If you're climbing a tree and cutting big branches and stuff, you wouldn't want some big heavy four-stroke lawnmower engine. You want some lightweight, zippy, horsepower-oriented two-stroke. So these things are dying out because emissions are killing them, because daddy government says that they're too dirty, but I love them. I don't care what they say. I think that these things help plants grow. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out there, but I don't care, you know? What I care about is, I'll breathe right from it. Good. Two-stroke oil smells real good, especially if you run like Klotz or something. So yeah, they have scented two-stroke oil if you didn't know. Anyway, that has been your two-stroke lesson today. I probably left all kinds of stuff out, and I can make future videos that are actually planned out. but I had this laying on the shelf and I was getting ready to throw it in the scrap pile, so I figured I'd just make a quick video. If you want more stuff like this, tell me in the comments, and I can actually plan stuff out and actually teach better. Naptown Tuner. And a trimmer like this, or like a chainsaw, a blower, a lot of handheld equipment to this day is still gonna have a 2-stroke engine. Now they're doing some funny things, like I just recently bought a string trimmer from Stihl, and they didn't advertise that it was 4-stroke. It comes with 2-stroke oil, and I think they're trying to kind of slide it in, like, because guys like me, I would not have bought that Stihl trimmer if I knew it had valves in it, if I knew it was like a 4-stroke, 2-stroke hybrid. Maybe we'll talk about that if people like engine stuff, if people just like engine information. Maybe I'll get more into other things. But this right here, yeah, it's a little bit of a dying breed. Like I just talked about, they're phasing it out because emissions, because, you know, it's all the science, you know, whatever. I'm not gonna get into it. I want to, but I won't. First off, even if you laid out all the global warming, now they call it climate change data, from all the best scientists, I couldn't sit here and go through it and tell you what not, you know, anyway, right? I'm just basically a country boy redneck from the city. So I'm just gonna go by the Bible, right? I know this earth is gonna burn up with fervent heat, and it's gonna be recreated. So whatever, I'm not like a litter guy, you know, I'm not like but I'm not so, I don't think that, especially not our generation. I can't, because you can't use any of this.